Back in the day, if you called a wide receiver just a slot receiver, that was rather insulting. Is that really that insulting in today's day and age? People like Amon-Ra St. Brown have made a living out of the slot, are incredibly effective, get a lot of counting stats, and have begun getting a lot of recognition. Well, Jaxon Smith-Njigba deserves a ton of recognition, especially after his breakout in Week 9. Is he just a slot receiver? Well, even if he is, how effective can he really be, and how much of an impact can he provide for the Seahawks? We're going to take a look at his Week 9 film, his profile, his advanced stats, his athletic metrics, and think about how he's best used, how he's being utilized, and think about just how good of a wide receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba really is. Standing at 6 foot and weighing 197, JSN, based on that build, could theoretically be an X, definitely a flanker or a slot. But based on his athletic profile, he's better used as a flanker or a slot, but he is skilled enough to win as an X. When we take a look at his athletic profile, though, what leads the Seahawks, I presume at least, to think that he's probably best used in the slot is that he runs a 4.57 40-yard dash. That is relatively slow by NFL standards, at least in the current day and age. That gives him a 34th percentile speed score, which is height and weight adjusted speed. But when you look at his burst, it's 54th percentile, so above average. But what really matters here is his agility score. That is 99th percentile agility. That makes him, from the slot, incredibly dangerous. He has tremendous cuts in his route running. He runs with absolute precision. He can turn on a dime. And he does have a 76th percentile catch radius too. But this profile in general is somebody that would be best used as a flanker or a slot. But in his case, because he's so skilled, I do think that he could win as an X. When we take a look at his Week 9 production, among wide receivers that had at least 5 targets, he played in 89.4% of possible routes. That's 42nd out of 48 players, so that's pretty low, which, when you consider his output this week, is even more remarkable. In this game, he played 91.5% of his snaps from the slot, so generally a slot receiver. Out wide, he played 8.5%, so he did get used out wide somewhat. But look at his yards per out run. 4.29 was good for third among the sample size of wide receivers. Look at his PFF receiving grade. 91.8. That's also good for third. His yards after catch per reception of 7 was good for sixth. His 3 missed tackles forced was good for second. His 2 contested catches were tied for third. His targets of 13 was tied for second. His 7 receptions were tied for seventh. His 180 receiving yards were good for first. And pay attention to the film later on. That number should have been a lot higher. And his 2 touchdowns were tied for first as well. And so despite only playing 89.4% of the possible routes, which was 42nd among the sample size of 48, JSN was at the top or nearly at the top of basically every single one of these metrics and counting stats. That is incredibly impressive. That led to him having a 37-point week, which was first among wide receivers in a full PPR. This is what we were waiting to see coming out of Ohio State. And so it appears that JSN has absolutely arrived. We'll have to see when DK Metcalf comes back what his target share looks like, but yeah, that's incredible. With DK Metcalf out, Jaxon Smith-Njigba took over this game. His 13 targets were almost twice as much as the next most targeted player, being A.J. Barner. His 7 receptions were almost double the next player, also A.J. Barner. His 180 receiving yards were twice as much as the next wide receiver in Tyler Lockett. And then his 2 touchdowns double Tyler Lockett's 1 as well. And so, in DK Metcalf's absence, JSN was easily the wide receiver 1 in this game, which, considering he was used from the slot primarily and over 90% of his routes run, that is interesting. Taking a look at his target share, his 38.24% is ludicrous. That is above elite wide receiver 1 territory. Most wide receivers, maybe Malik Neighbors, might end up with a target share over that. But if he could do that every game, he would be at the worst second in terms of total target share. So in DK Metcalf's absence, he was treated as an elite wide receiver one. But look at his target rate. That's his targets per route run. 30.95% is also in elite wide receiver one territory. And so that is obviously incredibly encouraging. If only from his fantasy perspective, if he was easily the wide receiver one every week and DK Metcalf was shipped off somewhere else. But yeah, in his absence, elite wide receiver one target share and targets per route run rate. And so we've seen that when given the opportunity, he was either tops or near the top in basically every advanced stat for week 9, as well as the counting stats. And then his usage was that of an elite wide receiver one. But what did he show us on film? Let's take a look at what we saw from him in week 9. All right, so taking a look at JSN's first target, he's right here in the slot. He's going to go in a return motion where he heads to this side of the field, then returns to his original alignment. They're going to set up a tunnel screen for him. They're going to have the tight end run a fade route down here. They're going to have a vertical route for the receiver, fade route for this receiver, and a vertical route for this one. The purpose of this is to get the defense to the side of the field to open up the tunnel screen in the middle. The Rams are going to be in cover 3, so you're going to have deep third defender, deep third defender, deep third defender. These two players who should be in a hook zone are going to get caught up trying to go after the tight end right here. And so it's really going to open up the middle of the field. JSN does a fantastic job of following his blockers. All right, so he's going to go in motion. Then he's going to return right back to where he was. And so look, you have two players in the middle of the field caught up on the tight end. You have your linemen starting to get out, and you have most of the perimeter players towards the outside of the field. This play worked perfectly. And so he slips in between his blockers, slips out of a tackle, jukes another guy out of his shoes, slips another tackle, and so the fourth guy finally gets to him. He is very good after the catch. It really is a shame for him that he doesn't have top-end speed. But let's take a look from the beginning. He is so slippery after the catch. That 99th percentile agility really does show on the field. Some people, their athletic measurables really don't show up on film. JSN's agility absolutely does. All right, taking a look at JSN's second target, he's right here in the slot. They're going to have Tyler Lockett run a curl, and they're going to have JSN run a slot fade down the field. The Rams are going to be in what I believe to be cover 6. So you're going to have a flat defender here. You're going to have a deep half safety here, and you're going to have quarters down the field on this side. Tyler Lockett is supposed to pull down this deep quarter cornerback, which is going to allow JSN to go into this deep part of the field in which he would theoretically be in if he wasn't drawn down to the curl. Quentin Lake here is going to be caught flat-footed. He does not respect JSN's speed in this case, and it works out quite poorly for him. And so if you look right here, JSN is running full speed at him. And while, of course, at this point you don't know what he's doing, you are flat-footed. He finally turns his hips, but it's a wrap at that point. He has a running head start going full speed at you, and you are just starting to backpedal after you turned your hips. Yeah, that's a wrap. It really is a shame that the pass was kind of floated out there. If he would have hit him in stride, that's a walk-in touchdown. But he is good down the field, too. He might be in the slot, but it's all the same for fantasy production, and he is a really good route runner. Way too easy. On JSN's third target, we're going to show you here. You probably guessed it. He's in the slot. They're going to have a scissors concept where Laviska Chenault runs a deep corner, and JSN runs a deep post. It's going to be quite effective against what I believe to be cover 4 run by the Rams. So you're going to have deep quarter, defender, deep quarter, and deep quarter. These two deep players are going to be on this half of the field, distracted by vertical routes down the field on this side. And this conflict defender, the safety, is going to roll with the deep corner run by Chenault, which leaves JSN wide open. One thing to pay attention to here is the pacing of JSN's route. He makes sure that Chenault gets right ahead of him before making his cut towards the middle of the field, and it's going to be quite effective. All right, so you'll notice that he drifts outside to the left just a little bit to get this defender scared that he's going to go this way, while also making sure that he's behind Chenault. And so that's all he needs, and the safety has his hips pointed this way. That is just a wrap. He realizes too late, unfortunately for him. And yeah, easy touchdown. So let's take a look in real time and make sure you pay attention to the pacing of JSN's route here. Easy money. If you like what you're hearing and seeing so far, feel free to like and subscribe. I love doing these player profile breakdowns where we take a look at what we see from them on film, their profiles, usage, advanced stats, athletic measurables. And so if you want to see more content like this, just like and subscribe. Thanks. All right, taking a look at JSN again, he's going to be in the slot. The Seahawks are going to get a switch release, so you're going to have Bobo going down here. And you're going to have JSN follow behind him before running a slot fade. It's going to be a very good play call because even though the Rams are going to be in a cover 3 technically, you'd have 2 deep third defenders, and this guy would theoretically be a deep third. They're going to be in cover 3 match, and so you're going to have this cornerback act in man coverage against Bobo, as well as this cornerback. And so what that's going to do is it's going to allow JSN to get in perfect position for this pass. So on this one, pay attention to JSN's timing of the route to make sure on the switch release that he gets right behind Bobo. And then also watch where he positions himself to make the throwing lane available for Geno. And so right away he slow plays it, then gets right behind him, then gets his shoulder up into the defender, gets him behind him, and then opens up a perfect avenue for Geno Smith. And he does get walloped on the sideline. But beautiful precision by JSN. It's even more impressive in real time. Look at that positioning. Beautiful ball as well. That is a masterpiece in route running by JSN. On this target, JSN is technically not in the slot at this point. However, they're going to put Bobo in motion, and he's going to be running a speed out. JSN is going to be running a corner. This is going to be very effective. The Rams are going to be in cover 3, so you're going to have deep third defender, and deep third defender. Once Jake Bobo goes in motion and heads out to the flat, this is going to draw down this cornerback. This safety isn't going to react quickly enough. This underneath defender here is going to realize what's happening and try to contend with JSN, but he's just too slow. And so it's a really good play call by the Seahawks. I really like Ryan Grubb. He is working wonders. All right, so at this point, JSN is going to beat his man. And this cornerback is paying attention to him, but he's going to be drawn by the speed out of Bobo. And it's going to put him in a conflict. He can either allow a free and easy completion here, or he can try to defend JSN. And so he's lining up for the throw. And at this point, it is already too late. JSN's beaten that underneath defender, and there's going to be a big enough hole in the zone coverage to fit in this ball. Nice catch through contact. And so let's take a look in real time. They're going to have Bobo go in motion for that speed out. Really good play call by Ryan Grubb. All right, so I'm going to show you an example of why JSN should have had an even bigger day with over 200 receiving yards. He would have been at about 220 if this one counted. He's going to be running a slice route from the slot. The Rams are going to be in cover 6, so you're going to have a flat defender here, deep half safety right here. You're going to have a deep quarter and a deep quarter. What's going to happen is Tyler Lockett is going to run vertically down the field, and this safety is going to have to respect that, and so he's going to be lined up towards this side of the field, which is going to free up JSN. Ultimately, I believe this safety is responsible for JSN. He does realize what's happening, but he's out of position, and it's much too late. This really just is a broken coverage. But nonetheless, JSN takes advantage of it, and if it wasn't for a holding penalty, he would have had an even bigger day. Way too easy. And he was already smoking him when they were actually trying to cover him, but they tried really hard to give him an additional 40 here. And it's a shame, too, because he could have had his first 200-yard day here, but nonetheless, you'll absolutely take it, and it's unfortunate in this circumstance that an offensive holding penalty is going to get this called back. All right, so you know how I mentioned if the previous play had counted, JSN would be at about 220 receiving yards? Well, if that one and this one counted, he would have been at about 258. So you have JSN in the slot once again. You're going to have a deep curl by Tyler Lockett, and you're going to have a sail route by JSN. The Rams are going to be in cover 3 match. And because they're in cover 3 match, this cornerback is going to act in man coverage against Lockett, and this cornerback is going to act in man coverage against JSN, and you're going to have a deep third defender here. Since it's match, this cornerback is going to be taken out of the play by Tyler Lockett's curl. Then this cornerback is going to get turned around, and he's going to get tripped up just a little bit. It's incidental contact, and it's just a shame that offensive holding strikes once again. And so you'll notice JSN gets right in his blind spot and makes it really inconvenient for this cornerback. And then their feet get tangled up. Makes the grab. And yeah, he could have had over 250 receiving yards in this game if about 68 or so receiving yards were not taken away by offensive holding penalties. Once again, it was a tremendous day for JSN, but it could have been much bigger. All right, so JSN, in DK Metcalf's absence, saw a lot of downfield work. Even though he was used in the slot over 90% of the time, we saw him run multiple slot fades, posts, a sail route. And so while his positional versatility wasn't that impressive in the sense of where he was aligned, he made the absolute most of it, and it was really good to see that he was able to dominate down the field. When we think about him as an athlete, he did have a 4.57 40-yard dash, and so he generally doesn't have the best speed to beat people deep on the outside, although I do think he's skilled enough to do it when needed. His 99th percentile agility absolutely shows up on film. His cuts are crisp. He's very savvy. He tempos his routes correctly. He's very good at positioning himself to make the most and make the passing lane as wide as possible for Geno Smith. And so in DK Metcalf's absence, he was treated as an elite wide receiver 1 in his usage. And in my opinion, he's proven that he, just like Amon-Ra St. Brown, despite not being what you would traditionally think of as a wide receiver 1 in terms of their position on the field, generally that's going to be somebody that's an X, possibly a flanker. And so, in my opinion, I do think that he is talented enough to be an elite wide receiver 1, kind of in the way that Amon-Ra St. Brown is, where even though he's not your traditional wide receiver 1 in the sense of an X wide receiver isolated running the big boy routes from the outside against press coverage, he was utilized all over the field, deep downfield, and while he doesn't possess elite top shelf speed, he ran a 4.57. His 99th percentile agility absolutely shows up on film. He runs crisp routes. He paces his routes really well, and he positions himself to make a wide window for Geno Smith to pass the ball into. And so, in my opinion, given that once he was finally given a good amount of usage, he immediately took advantage of it and should have had at least 250 receiving yards on the day. I do think that he is an elite wide receiver one in terms of his talent, just not in the way that you would traditionally see a wide receiver one. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be an elite wide receiver one for us in fantasy with the return of DK Metcalf. But I do think that once Tyler Lockett leaves, we have, at the very least, a mid wide receiver two, if not higher, depending on the total volume. Ryan Grubb's offense is perfect for him. They used condensed formations, switch releases to open up things down the field, and JSN is going to be a very good wide receiver for a very long time. But what do you think? Do you think JSN has what it takes to be an elite wide receiver one? Do you think he's just pretty good? In terms of fantasy, if Tyler Lockett leaves this next season, where do you see JSN finishing? Wide receiver one, wide receiver two, wide receiver three? Let me know below in the comment section and let me know why. With that being said, if you like what you've seen and heard in this video, feel free to like and subscribe. I love doing these player breakdowns where we take a look at their profiles, advanced stats, athleticism, and then break down what we see from them on film. And so if you want to see more content like this, just like and subscribe. Thanks.